Good day everyone, and in this video we'll be talking about arrays. So let's go ahead and create a new file as we've done. So create a new file and let's go ahead and save that as arrays.js in our Node.js folder. So now, what is an array? An array is a special variable which can hold more than one value. So when we were learning about variables, we have created variables like this. Name is equal to John. We've always created variable like this. It holds one value, or we've said var age is equal to 1. We've done a lot of this, and even for objects we've said var maybe person is equal to. So these are single storage variables. An array is a special kind of variable that holds more than one value. Now the use case of this is if you have a list of items, rather than store them in a single variable, like for example we have a variable car and we have multiple type of cars, and let's say we have car 1 is equal to maybe Rolls Royce, for example. Then car 2 is equal to maybe a BMW. We are declaring multiple variables to store this kind of data. An array would help you use just one variable to store that data. And an array is a sequence. So let's go ahead and create our first array. You can create an array by just saying you declare it as a variable. You can just say var cars is equal to, then you open a block quote, then inside your block quote then you can put your first car, which is BMW. You can put the second car, which is maybe a Rolls Royce, and it can go on and on and on and on and on like that. Now the good thing with this is, because you are creating it in a sequence, you can just go ahead and find an element in an array, because it's a sequence, just by going through the sequence. Now there are several ways through which we can declare arrays. I think we've done one here. We declared it and we gave it all the values. There are several ways we can also declare arrays. Now, like I said, an array is a sequence, and you have to access elements of an array by the index of the array. So this is your array. This is the elements of your array. You have to get an item by using the index of the array, and we said it's a sequence. So this is, let's say for example, ideally this is your car 1, this is your car 2. But in arrays the index starts from 0, so this is your car 0 actually. So for you to access elements of an array, you have to take the variable of an array, cars, and you can open a block quote and you put car 0. 0 is the first index of an array. So if you have 10 cars here, the first one begins from 0 and the last one becomes 9. So let's go ahead and just print this out to the screen. Let's console.log car 0 to the screen. Console.log car 0. Now we will go ahead and run Node.js. We have an error. Okay, car is not defined. We named our variable cars, so let's go ahead and correct that mistake and run our code again. So now you can see that cast 0 is BMW because 0 is the first index of an array. So now, like I said, there are other several ways through which we can declare an array. As an object, we can declare an array and leave it empty like this. Then we can go ahead and start initializing stuff inside. We can create a new array element by just saying cast, open a block quote and say cast 0 is equal to BMW. Now if you go ahead and console.log cast 0 to the screen and we run our node arrays.js, we still get a BMW. If we can, let's add one more. We can say cast 1 is equal to Peugeot, for example. I can't get the spelling of Peugeot, so let's just use a Toyota. If we go ahead and console.log cast 1 to the screen, we can see that we have Toyota printed out to the screen. Let's try print out something that we have not declared yet, and we get undefined because we have not set the value for cast 2. So now this is another way in which you can create your arrays. You just initialize first and then you go ahead to use them to add values to them. Now another way in which we can declare arrays is using the JavaScript new keyword. You can just use variable cast is equal to new array, then inside your new array you can just maybe your BMW and your Toyota. Let's add one more. Let's add a Chevrolet. Now you can go ahead and print out cast 2 to the screen because, like I said, the index of the first one is 0, the second one is 1, and the third one becomes 2, on and on and on. So if you go ahead and console.log cast 2, you can see you have Chevrolet printed out on the screen. Like I said, you can also change the index. You can change the value of an element in an array by just, for example, you can just do cast 2. We want to change from Chevy, and we want to change the value of cast 2. Sorry, it's not supposed to be a string. Cast 2, we can make that we can make cast 2 a Range Rover. Initially it was a Chevy. You can go ahead and change it now and make it a Range Rover. So if we go ahead and print that out to the screen, we print out cast 2 to the screen, we can see that we should have changed the value from a Chevrolet to a Range Rover. Now you can print out, you can console.log cast the array itself to the screen. You can access the full array and you can see we have, in a sequence, we have BMW, we have Toyota, and we have a Range Rover because we have changed Range Rover over here. Now it's a lot similar to object, and for example, for clarity itself, a array is a type of object. You should see that it's similar to object in some ways. An array is a special types of object. If you go ahead and The difference between objects and arrays are just that object uses name while array uses indexes. And an array can take several forms of data. An array can take numbers. For example, we can have, let me leave this out. I would maintain cars, but I would just change this to 1, to 2, and to 3. We can go ahead and run this, and we can see that it displays our numbers to the screen. An array can also take you can take other forms of data. You can take numbers, you can take objects, you can take strings, you can take functions, and you can even take an array itself. So let's just go ahead and just put it to a little bit of test. Let's declare an empty array. Let's just name it my array. And you can just say my array 0 is equal to, let's make the first index of our array equal to an object. We can just say, let's say our array is equal to our person object, and we said person can have a name. Name is equal to name is David. We can say age is 12, for example. Then if we go ahead and console.log my array to the screen, we can see that the first, let's go ahead and add one more. Let's say my array 1 is equal to a string David. So if we go ahead and save this and we run this, we can see that the first element in our array is an object which is named David, age 12, and the second element is a string called David. Like I said, we can also have an array as an element of an array. So we can just say my array 2, for example, is equal to maybe an array with numbers in there like 1, 2, and 3. So if we go ahead and run this again, we can see that the elements in our array becomes 3. The first one being an object, the second one being a string, and the third one being the sequence of number, which is an array. Now let's go ahead to do some more fun stuff with arrays. One of the good things with JavaScript is that there are some properties or functions that are built into arrays, like for us to use. An example of this these properties will be length. So for example, we have 1, 2, 3 as our array. We have a sequence of number which is 1, 2, 3. We can find out the length of this array by just using the length property of an array, and you do that by just saying you call the arrow, then you access the property of the length property of the array. It's a property, so this should count how many. It should count the length of this array, which should be 3 in this case. So let's go ahead and console.log our array.length to the screen. Console.log and if we go ahead to save this and we run this, we can see that it's 3 because we have 3 elements in our array. We can make it 4 and try to check it. We can add a string to it, you, and we try to check it, and we see that the element in our array becomes 5. Now this is actually good because, for example, you have an array, you don't know the length and you want to add something to it. What you can just do is you get so you can just say length. Let's declare another variable var. Length is equal to my array dot length. Now if we go ahead, we are aware that the length of our array now is 5, so this length value will store 5. If we want to add, another way in which we can add to the array by just saying, so my array, then we use the length of the array. Now we have ascertained that we access arrays by the index. So this is 0 index, 2 index, 0 index, the first index, second index, third, fourth. So that means the index of the last element in our array has an index of 4. Meanwhile, length would be equal to 5. If we want to add another element to this array, we have to add to the 5th. We have to give it index 5. So now, since this one is already 5, we can just say my array length is equal to 6, for example. Or let's do a string, 6th element. 6th element. Now if we save this and let's try to print out our array now. Console.log my array. You can see that we've added our 6th element. Let's do something. Let's console.log length to the screen. Console.log length to the screen. So if we go ahead and save this and run this first, you can see we have 5. So this 5 is what we put into. So this, what we are doing here is basically saying my array 5 is equal to 6th element. So that makes this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5. So the 5th index is the 6th element. So that's what we basically did here. Now, this is not the only way through which you can add to an array. Arrays have a function called the push function. You can just use, rather than using the length and using the length to add, you can just say my array then dot push. So it's a function that is already built into arrays that you can just access as a property and use it to add some items. So let's go ahead and see add our 6th element into the array. 6th element. So now if we go ahead and we go ahead to print out my array to the screen, which is console.log my array, we should have 6th element also added in this case, which we do. Now there are a couple other functions that we can use, and one of them is the pop. We use the pop. This is the pop function. we use the pop function. It's just like this. We use the pop function to remove the last element of an array. So currently the last element of an array is, let's do console.log our array. Then let's run a pop function on it. So my array dot pop. So if we go ahead and save this, what this does is it removes the last element of an array. It just pops this one off. So if we go ahead and run this, okay, we popped it but we did not print it out to the screen. Let's go ahead and copy this and paste it after we've popped the array. If we go ahead and run this, we can see that it first displayed the array completely, then it took off the last items. Now aside pop, we can also shift. We can also run a shift function on our array. So if we go ahead and do this, we still have 1 2 3 4, then string PO over here. If we shift this and we go ahead and run this again, it takes off the first one. So shift removes the first element in an array, while pop removes the last element in an array. So some of the other things we can do is we can concatenate arrays as well using the concat function. So for example, we have an array of numbers here, and we have another array, my array 2, and that one is, let's say, 5 6 7 8. We can run a concatenate on the both of them just by calling my array function, my array dot concat. Then you can just concat it, and what this receives, the argument this receives, will be my array 2. Now if we go ahead and run this, we console.log my array to the screen, console.log my array to the screen. What we get is, okay, I think there's an error. So I found the error. Before you can concatenate, this has actually been concatenated, but what you have to do is you have to store this function into a new variable. So you can just say result array is equal to my array, then you concatenate my array 2 to it. So if you go ahead and print this out to the screen now, console.log results array, and you run Node.js, you can see that result array becomes a concatenation of my array and my array 2. So you can do for multiple as well. You can have, for example, var my array 3, then you set that equal to 9 10, for example, 9 10. Then you can now concatenate my array with array 2 and my array 3, and you store that into result array. If you go ahead and run this, you should have your array become 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. There are a lot of things we can do with arrays. We are actually going to do a lot with it, and I hope you guys get a fair understanding of this. You understand as we move on. Thank you. Hi everyone. So in our recent videos, we've talked about asynchronous and we've talked about requiring npm files. So today what we are going to be doing is we are going to be requiring our own local files as well as work with external data. Like, so asynchronous, like we said, is when you are doing multiple things concurrently, and the reason why sometimes you have to use the asynchronous function is because some of the things you would be needing would be coming from external sources. So today we'll be working with data from external sources. We are going to be working with a weather API from OpenWeather. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So go back to your desktop and navigate into your course folder, which is the HTC backend, and then you create a new folder in there, name the folder weather, then navigate to that folder in your VS Code. So in my desktop I have HTC backend and then weather. I created the folder already, so just go ahead and open that. You can cancel this for the meantime, and let's now begin. So first thing we want to do is let's open our terminal, new terminal, and let's initialize our npm application, npm init. So the package name weather, the version, the description, weather app, or anything you want. Entry points, let's say index.js, test command, git repository, let's leave that out. Keywords, let's leave that. Author Kazim David, license ISC, and this is okay. So now we have our package.json. Now let's go ahead and do a little of installations into our code. Let's install, maybe let's do npm install, let's install requests. So you can use requests to access data from, you can use requests to actually request data from API endpoints, and like I said, API is application program interface. So now let's go back, let's go to our browser and let's go to openweathermap.org. So visit openweathermap.org. You would have to create an account, so just go ahead and click sign in. You just go ahead and click sign in. Now if you don't have an account, you can create an account. When you create an account, then just go ahead to sign in. When you sign in, you can see that it's used to get historical weather for any location. You can use it to get the current location as well as the historical data for such location. So now the next thing we are going to do is you go to API, and when you go to API, what you can see here is, scroll down, you can see historical weather API, you can see current weather data. Just click on the API documentation for that, and you can see how to make an API call. Like I said, an API is an application programming interface. So OpenWeatherMap is an application, and they compile this data, and they want you to be able to use that data. So they provided an endpoint. You see, it's just like a website URL. So they provided this for you to be able to actually access their endpoint. So for us, let's go ahead and just click this. Let's copy this. No, let's not use this. This one receives latitude and longitude, so we can use that, but let's scroll down till we see the one that accepts CT rather than longitude, latitude. So you see built-in API request by city name. You can call by city name or city name more. So let's go ahead and copy this. So if you go ahead and copy this and we paste this in our browser, we can see invalid API key. And the reason why is that the API endpoint, you have to use an API key to actually access it, and also we did not provide a city name. So how do you get your API key? You have to go to my API keys. Just click on your email, which is at the top right, and visit my API keys. Now you can see you can create a new key if you don't have, but since I already have, you can just go ahead and copy this. Then in that URL, replace it with this. Then also the city. The city is you have to change the city from whether city name, let's say London, for example. Question is equal to London, for example, and then let's go ahead and run this. So you can see we have gotten the longitude and latitude for that. We've gotten the weather description is, this is a whole lot of data. We get the temperature, the humidity, the pressure, and all of those things. So, and you can see that it returns this in JSON format. It returns all of this in JSON format. So we have been able to access data from the openweathermap.org using their API endpoint. So now we need this data. We want to use this data in our weather code. Let's begin to actually build that. So now, like I said, request, we can use request to request data from an API endpoint. And how are we going to do that? We just have to, let's create our server.js file. Let's create a new file in here and name it maybe server.js or app.js. Let's go ahead and use app.js. Now we just have to require let's say constant request is equal to require request so after we require request, now we have the request over here. The next thing we are going to do is, let's go ahead and call that request function. We say request. So this request, as you can see, it receives two parameters or three, which is, the first one is an object, which is the object would take two things, which is the URL, then also it will receive JSON true. So this is an object, so it's telling us that get the JSON from this so and so URL. Then the next argument is going to take would be a function. So you put a comma and you declare a function over here. This function receives three parameters. This runs when it has actually tried to access this URL. So it receives three parameters. The first one is error. So in case there's any error. Then it takes a response also, as well as the body. So it's a function. So what we need to do here is we just have to say if there is an error, if error, then you should just console.log console.log could not fetch weather. Then else, that means if there is no error, that means it has gotten our JSON. Then what we can just say is we should console.log the body of the response that we are getting. So if we need to actually get our URL, we have to fix our URL over here. So let's go back here and copy the same URL that we used, and then let's put it in here. If we save this and we go ahead and run node app.js, you can see that we got all the same details that we got from this URL. So now, since we are already getting it in our code, then we should be able to actually access it in our app. So let's take a look at this properly and just pick out some data from here. So what do we need? What do we need from here? Let's just go ahead and pick the let's go ahead and pick the temperature minimum, or the temperature. So the temperature is 282.48. Let's go ahead and pick that. We can see in here that it's under just temperature. Okay, weather. Okay, let's look at it from here. Let's look at it from here. So this is our response. We get the coordinates, we get the weather, we get the base, then we get the mean. So let's just access body.main.temperature. So it's accessing this main, then accessing this temp in it. So let's change this to the temperature is, then let's append body dot main dot temp, body dot main dot temp. So if we go ahead and run this again, we can see that we get our temperature. So we can now use this temperature to do whatever we want to do in our application. So we have made our first API call. This is one of the ways you can actually make a call to an API. So we've made our first API call. Let's go ahead and just make this look a little bit good, so we don't have hard code everything. So first of all, let's declare a variable constant API key, API underscore, let's say API underscore key is equal to, then let's copy this out. Let's copy this out from here. Let's copy this out and make this a string of this. Then also let's copy city. Let's say variable city is equal to, let's say London. So now in our URL, let's actually now change, let's change all of this. So let's change this to question is equal to, you know what you have to do, you just have to terminate this one, add a plus, then add another one, another to start a new string. Then in here we append our city over here. Then also after this we just go ahead and add a plus and append our API key also. Now what you are seeing here is a get parameter. What you are seeing here is a get parameter. So this is the URL. This up to this point, from here up to this point is the URL, but it adds a get parameter that we are going to be learning also. But if you are familiar with web forms, you can see that this is a get parameter. So the question is equal to city and the app ID is equal to string. So you use it to attach data and send to the server directly from the URL of the website. So now we have this. Let's go ahead and run it and see if it still runs. And we still get the same response, so our code still runs. We can leave it at this. We can just leave it at this. Then let's go ahead to create a function. Let's wrap this into a function. So function get weather, get temperature. Let's say get temperature, get temperature, get temperature. Then let's copy this request function into our get temperature function. Then let's receive three arguments. Let's receive two arguments over here. Let's receive the city. No, let's receive just the city over here, so that you can just get temperature for multiple city. So now if we go ahead and call get temperature and we just put in London. If we go ahead and run this, get temperature. So I mistakenly called get temperature inside of my function. It's supposed to be outside. You call your functions outside the function. So if we go ahead and save this and run it again, then we can get our temperature is 282.48. So now what we have here is we have created a function that gets temperature. So we can go ahead and change this. I'm out of city. Let's just say let's see if Dallas. We can use Dallas and run Node.js and see if that comes. So you can see the temperature in Dallas is 2281.89. So now what we have here is we have created a code that actually fetches the temperature in multiple city. You can go ahead and change this multiple times and you get the temperature for those locations. Now, one more thing I want us to do is rather than writing all our codes in one place, we can go ahead and keep key parts of our code in another page. You understand? We can keep key part of our code in another page and then just try to access those codes later. So you don't want to have this kind of code, this kind of high volume codes in your server page where you actually do some stuff. So let's just go ahead and learn something today called export as requiring your local files. So you see here we required something from our node modules, which is an external file. What we want to learn to do now is to require something that we created. So let's go ahead and copy all of this. Let's cut it out actually and save it. Then let's add a new file and call it let's call this temperature.js. Get temperature. Let's just say temperature.js. So let's put this in our temperature.js and go ahead to save that. Now what we are going to do is, let's take off this city, and we have to take that off. So let's go back to our app.js now. Now let's imagine that from our app.js we want to access the code that we have written in this temperature.js. What do we have to do? First, let's create another new file and call it, let's just create another new file, save it as test.js. Let's just create a test file. And what we want to do is, let's do function actually. So function add, and we just want to display to console.log, or let's just return 4. Let's just return a number 4 from here. Now for you to be able to use this function add in another file, what you just have to do is you just have to use module.export, then the function you want to export, so is equal to add. So now you've exported your modules like this. You just have to export it like this, so you can go ahead to access that in another file. So let's go ahead to app.js, and the same way you require for npm files, you still have to require for, so let's say var, let's use a constant add is equal to require add. So you just have to use the actually module.export actually takes a function. It does not just take like an instance of a function, like you don't call the function. So rather than having module.export is equal to add, what we are going to have is module.functions is equal to the function itself at declaration. So what we are having here is we are consoling.log 4 here. So when we go back to our app.js, you just go ahead and write constant test is equal to the name of your local file. So require your local file, which is /test.js. So if you go ahead to call test, then what we are going to have is, you see we have 4 over here because we are requiring test, which is a function. Then we just have to call test, and test will call the function inside test.js. So let's go ahead and just delete our test file. Then let's just proceed to make use of our temperature.js inside our app.js. So now what we are going to do here is we just have to take this off, and we set module dot export is equal to our function get temperature. You understand? So when we do this, that means we should be able to access this get temperature from our app.js. So let's go ahead and declare constant weather is equal to require takes a string which is dot slash then our temperature dot js. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to say weather, and we want to pass in the location, which is London, for example. So connecting my network quickly so we can actually have access. If we try to run this now, we are going to get an error. We should not get an error because I'm already connected. So let's just go ahead and run this, and we can see the temperature is 283.56 in London. So if we change it to Dallas, we also get it. So now this makes your code a little cleaner, because you can now have this bulk of code written somewhere else and your app.js looks this clean. So those are the importance of requiring local files. You just have to write some portion of code in another place and then you use it in yours. So let's go ahead and just make a couple more action on this. Let's do npm install yags. So we are installing yags. We've used the yags a couple of times. We are installing it into our weather application. So let's just play with this. Let's just, since we are already requiring this, let's get the city from the user itself via the command line. So what we are going to do is let's declare another constant yags is equal to, we have to require yags, then also we are going to get dot arg v. No, I think so let's go ahead and just declare constant argv, as argument, is equal to require yags dot argv, and you remember if we console.log this, what we get is this. So let's go ahead and run this node app.js and add maybe a named variable, let's say city London. Let's go ahead and a minute. So let's go ahead and console.log argv to the screen. So we can get argv.city is equal to London from here. So what we want to do is we want to do this. So if argv.city is not equal to undefined, we have to use type of. So if the type of argv.city is not equal to undefined, what do we want to do? We want to actually resolve the weather of that particular city. So we just say weather, then argv.city. So else, we just want to say else console.log please enter a city. So now save that, and if you go ahead and run this, you can see it resolves your city for you. You can go ahead and change the city, Dallas, and you can see we get the weather for Dallas. Now the good thing with this is we were able to do this with minimal code. Why? Because we have created this. And the good use of this is that you can actually reuse this code multiple times. You can just go ahead and copy this portion of code and use it in another different app that you are building. So today we've learned how to require local files, and as well we've also made a call to our first API. So we've interfaced with other application, which is the Open Weather Map. I think that will be all for today.